Sir, we need you on this immediately. I hadn't even taken a proper sip of my morning tea before the junior legal associate practically vibrated at my office door like a jittery terrier. I didn't roll my eyes, though every fiber of me wanted to. I took the printout from his hand and scanned it. Top corner, confidential memo. Center, draft divestiture schedule. Bottom line, someone had accidentally CC'd the entire partner roster. One wrong forward and a press leak would hit before lunch. Tell Collins to recall the email, scrub the servers, internal and external, I said evenly. Then get me the full recipient list and audit logs. I want to know if any files triggered non-compete clauses. I said it like I was explaining how to make a proper grilled cheese, because that's how I handled disasters, quietly, efficiently, before anyone else noticed. I'm Adrian Clark, 48. For the past 12 years, I'd been the fixer at Greenfield MedTech. My official title, Senior Strategic Advisor. Reality, I played chess with a board full of predators. 15 years in the Army taught me preparation, strategy, and anticipation. I enlisted right out of high school in Colorado Springs, served in logistics and strategic planning across 3 deployments. Transitioning to civilian life at 33, I brought those same skills to the corporate battlefield. Discipline, attention to detail, pattern recognition, everything translated seamlessly to crisis management. I covered up their errors, wrote playbooks they never read, and erased very, very bad problems quietly. Military saying, proper preparation prevents poor performance. Corporate translation, proper preparation prevents pink slips. It was a Tuesday. By 9:30 a.m., I'd neutralized the leak, updated kill switch protocols on external drives, and sent the comms team a benign internal email to smooth over panic. Half the board didn't notice. The other half was probably still figuring out Zoom muting. The CFO called me a miracle in a suit, which was rich, considering he once tried to expense a hunting trip as team building. He also asked if his wife's yoga classes could count as executive wellness consulting. Crisis handled. I returned to my office, set down my tea, and opened my calendar. That's when I saw it. My weekly one-on-one with CEO Simon Walsh, scheduled for the last 6/24 Mondays, was gone. No reschedule, no cancellation email. Thursday's pipeline alignment invite had been updated. I wasn't on it. Not declined, just erased. I checked my system access logs. Back-end consoles, doc libraries, review queues, all still there, but edit privileges had quietly dropped on 3 key folders. Someone had removed access while I was cleaning up their mess. I didn't panic. I got still. Like when you hear movement in the brush on a night patrol and aren't sure if it's wildlife, or worse. Your training kicks in. You catalog every detail. Army taught me to read battlefields. Corporate life taught me to read office politics. And the signs pointed to an ambush. 3 months earlier, Simon's granddaughter, Clara Walsh, 28, Stanford MBA, had joined. All business speak, no subtlety. Digital transformation. Modernizing legacy processes. Corporate code for cutting out the old guard. I'd seen the play before. Young hotshot enters, touts innovation, trims the dead weight. Problem is, they usually can't tell dead weight from load-bearing beams. Army lesson. Prepare for every contingency. If you're still listening, I'll just say this. Most people assume they'd see it coming. You don't. I almost didn't. I thought I was still just fixing their messes. I didn't realize I was the mess someone planned to fix quietly. I left the office early. Unusual for me. No one commented, though a few eyes tracked me with those polite, measured blinks, the ones people give when they know something you don't. My phone buzzed in the elevator, a calendar alert. Permissions revoked. Source, internal systems admin. They were cleaning house, and I was still holding the mop. Home. Fed Ranger, my German Shepherd from a military working dog program. Poured bourbon. Opened the encrypted archive I hadn't touched in 8 years. Original buyout docs, contingency plans, forgotten LLC agreements. My office was half corporate war room, half command center. Maps of org charts, financial projections, intelligence boards. Ranger settled, alert and watchful. I accessed the secure drive with my military service number. Folder, emergency protocols, break glass when screwed. Contingency plans I drafted during Simon's paranoia over hostile takeovers. Defensive measures. What Simon didn't know. I included provisions protecting myself. Army instinct. Never enter hostile territory without an escape route. Trigger file 18.3b stared back at me like a tripwire I'd set and forgotten. I smiled. Next morning, the first domino fell. Clara sent the internal announcement. Operational Vision Refresh Q3 and beyond. I wasn't CC'd, but my monitoring systems were humming. Old habit, multiple intel sources. Corporate theater, full of buzzwords. Restructuring, flattening verticals, cross-collaboration, synergistic optimization. Paragraph 3. The kill shot. All legacy strategy roles reviewed immediately for alignment with new KPIs. Transition plans start next week. Legacy strategy roles. Me. Except I was something else now. Something Clara hadn't planned for. Something Simon hadn't noticed. Walking back toward them with 15 years of military training and 12 years of inside knowledge. I watched the comments, reactions, and nervous DMs rack up. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe. We post one every day. The whole office was buzzing like a disturbed anthill. I stayed silent. Didn't text anyone. Didn't log into Slack. Didn't even check voicemail. No traces of forward motion. No signals. Just dead air. Army lessons. Information warfare. Corporate translation. Silence before a strike is the loudest weapon you carry. The storage unit sat in one of those industrial complexes off I-25. The kind of place where people stash everything from failed businesses to forgotten memories. Unit 52 had been my backup for nearly a decade, though I'd hoped never to use it. The air smelled like motor oil and broken promises. My unit was wedged between a defunct printing supply company and someone's abandoned home gym. Dumbbells and dreams gathering dust in equal measure. I keyed in the code, my old Army service number, and the door groaned open, exhaling years of stillness. Inside, everything was immaculate, military-grade precision and storage. Against the back wall was the filing cabinet I'd moved during the second merger, when everything had gone digital. They'd thought digitization meant efficiency. I'd known it was just easier to erase inconvenient records. Behind a broken chair and a crate marked Q3 contingency playbooks, I found it. A fireproof lockbox, mechanical combination only. No electronics, no Wi-Fi, no hackable nonsense. Old school steel and precision. I spun the dial. Left 18, right 3, left 21. Coordinates from a mission in Afghanistan that had shaped my instincts forever. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a pawn to protect the king. Sometimes you have to be willing to be the pawn yourself. Click. Open. Inside, the emergency protocols folder. Not just in case. Not if something goes wrong. Break glass when you're targeted papers. Plans within plans. Contingencies layered for decades. The files were heavy with foresight, the weight of preparation. I flipped through them, remembering the paranoia that had birthed each one. Simon had once feared the board staging a coup. He'd asked me to anticipate every possible move. What he didn't know, someday, I might need protection from him. Clause 9, immunity during executive cleanup operations, expired. Clause 12, reinstatement rights if terminated mid-acquisition, invalid, since I'd sold my shares. Clause 15, whistleblower safeguards, too risky. Then I stopped at Clause 18.3b. I held the paper under the fluorescent light. Heavy, top-grade bond. Inked and initialed 8 years ago, stamped March 15th. The Ides of March, just like Caesar. Simon had joked about the date when we signed the merger. I'd smiled, silently approving the irony. The clause, if a retroactive termination occurs by an executive with family ties to leadership, the named employee assumes full rights to equity redistribution under subsection 6A, provided authentication follows Addendum B. I traced the lines in Addendum B. Authentication required 3 things: retroactive termination, leadership change involving family, and manual activation via timestamped, notarized original document. Sitting on the concrete floor, file in my lap, hands steady like a sniper's, I realized all 3 conditions were in place. Retroactive? Check. Corporate protocol would backdate Clara's promotion. Familial leadership? Check. Simon's granddaughter, Director of Strategic Innovation. Manual activation? That's why I carried this pen, with pressure-sensitive ink linked to my protocols. I called my notary. Hello, Mr. Hayes. Yes, physical verification. Original document, witness protocols, full trail. 1 hour, Starbucks on 16th Street. Triple rush fee, No exceptions. Hung up. Took a breath that felt like the first real oxygen in weeks. This wasn't about revenge or ego. This was preparation, foresight, training, military discipline applied to corporate warfare. Army lesson. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Today, the worst became their problem. My attorney, Liam Fletcher, ran a brick office behind a sandwich shop and vintage record store. Boots to court. 30 years of corporate wrangling etched into every move. I liked him, never asked why, just how soon. He'd suggested the authentication protocols years ago, sliding the folder across his scarred oak desk. I said, verify one signature. Dated March 15th, 8 years prior. Original ink, initialed, witnessed per section 18. He flipped through like a crime novel, eyebrow raised at the equity figures. Just audit prep, I said smoothly. He nodded, opened a drawer that looked like a bank vault. Stamps, seals, verification tools that would dwarf most cars. Timestamp logging. Yes. Digital, physical, redundancies, full trail. Anything else? I was never here. He smirked, same expression as 8 years ago when we drafted the clauses. You always say that. And yet here I am, not in prison. He stamped the papers with decades of practiced precision. Michael, I don't give advice unless asked. Not asking, I replied. Good. But be ready for what comes after you pull this trigger. Been preparing since I left the army, I said, tucking the file into my jacket. Friday arrived with crisp Colorado sunlight. I slept deeper than I had in weeks. Mission parameters clear, equipment ready. At 8:45, my phone buzzed. HR discussion, room 7B, 9 a.m. blindfold and cigarette. I showered, shaved, donned Navy suit, military press, retirement ceremony suit. Ranger watched, head tilted. Stay alert, boy. When I come home, everything will be different. Clara Walsh waited in the HR glass box, poised, oxygen all hers. 28, Stanford MBA, and Simon's granddaughter. She had his jawline, his arrogance, none of his real-world instincts. Buttoned up in a charcoal blazer worth more than most people earn in a month, radiating confidence untested by failure. Evelyn Hart, HR director, sat beside her like a stagehand waiting for her cue. 45, company lifer, perfected the art of looking busy while dodging real responsibility. Her fingers drummed on an employee handbook she'd probably never read. I stepped in, closing the door with the careful precision of someone who knew every motion was observed and cataloged. Adrian, thanks for joining us, Clara said, her voice artificially smooth, practiced in 1,000 executive communications workshops. We'll make this brief. I stayed standing. Military lessons, posture shifts the power balance. I looked at her with the same professional curiosity I used on equipment failure reports, evaluating a problem that needed a solution. She pressed on, likely following a consultant's script. After a strategic review of operational structures, your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Evelyn jumped in, eyes darting to cue cards. Paperwork was finalized yesterday. Details are in this packet. Retroactive termination. Check. You're terminating me, I said. Statement, not question. Yes, Clara replied, a touch too fast. As part of a broader digital modernization initiative. Nothing personal. Of course not. I answered, voice like a weather report. Evelyn slid a manila envelope across the table. Severance outlined here. Badge and laptop deactivated. Facilities will discreetly escort you in 15 minutes. Like I was hazardous material. Clara cleared her throat, expecting tears or fury, an MBA exercise in emotional management. What she didn't know, I'd spent 15 years where controlling emotions meant survival. I'll sign, I said, pulling the pen from my jacket. The pen, pressure-sensitive, tied to authentication protocols she didn't know existed. Evelyn blinked. We have pens available, she said. I'll use mine. I uncapped mine deliberately, a ritual. Blue ink, perfect pressure, signing the acknowledgement page with care, usually reserved for treaties. This pen activated verification systems, timestamp protocols, legal frameworks lying dormant for 8 years. Clara watched, thinking she saw defeat. What she really saw, the arming of a device she'd never imagined. I recapped the pen, slid it back into my pocket, and stood. 30 seconds had passed. 30 seconds had shifted the balance of power. Thanks, I said, professional as ever. Security needn't escort me. I know the way out. I picked up the envelope, each step deliberate. Eyes followed, relieved it had gone smoothly. Outside, the Colorado sun hit differently. Sharper, brighter. I got in my truck, stared at the envelope, then checked my calendar. Friday, 2:15 p.m. Conference room, 12A. Board meeting, Q3 strategic review. According to the system, I was invited. According to Clara's paperwork, I was gone. According to clause 18.3b, I now had standing as something else entirely. Not employee, owner. Truck started. Home to prepare. By 2:10, parked in my usual spot. Level 2, far corner, next to the pillar that had washed my truck for 12 years. Same cracked windshield, same pine air freshener, same coffee stain from a crisis call 3 years ago. Everything the same. Except me. Boots clicked against concrete, measured. Military bearing, shoulders square, tie straight. Verified documents rested in one pocket, the pen in the other, now a legal weapon. The elevator ride felt longer, the weight of what I carried magnifying each second. Doors opened. Voices from 12A. Hall lined with photos. Simon shaking politicians' hands. Clara accepting meaningless awards. Corporate mythology displayed like a museum of ego. By day's end, some would need updating. I entered the room. Board members flanked the table like judges over someone else's trial. Clara shuffled notes, confident she'd removed the biggest obstacle. Simon, 65, empire builder, watched her inherit it. Legal counsel huddled with their associate, wishing they were elsewhere. I stepped in, claiming every inch of marble floor. Clara froze, blinked twice, then smiled. Predictable. Adrian, she said, pitch rising, we weren't expecting you. I smiled, expression dry, eyes cold. Interesting. I'm still on the invite. 12A, 2:15 p.m. Funny how systems work. Her eyes twitched, but she maintained her act. I slid into my usual chair, third from the left, across from the CFO. Silence, except the hum of the projector and subtle realization that their plan had just faltered. Well, Clara said, clearing her throat. Agenda today, let's dive in. First slide, Q3 Digital Transformation Initiative, Legacy System Elimination. I checked my watch, 2:14. 1 minute until the email I scheduled hit legal counsel's inbox. 1 minute until the quietest corporate explosion in history. She droned on about streamlined processes, operational synergies, consultant speak masking the lack of specifics. Board nodded along, pretending to understand leveraged optimization matrices. 2:15 p.m. watch vibrated once. The legal counsel's tablet chimed, that crisp, polite corporate alert that always demanded attention. He glanced down, expecting routine. Then his expression shifted. The associate leaned in, eyes widening as if reading his own obituary. Excuse me, counsel, he said, voice slicing through Clara's presentation like a scalpel. Clara froze mid-buzzword. Is there a problem? He didn't answer immediately. Opened the email. Tapped the attachment. The PDF filled the conference room screen. Header, Emergency Equity Redistribution Protocol, Clause 18.3b. Subheader, Activated, Involuntary Termination Verified. The room went silent in that particular way where everyone knows they're watching someone's world change irreversibly. First page, my name, company ID, employment history. Below, the legal text, unambiguous and airtight. In the event Adrian Clark is subject to involuntary termination under circumstances involving executive familial restructuring. This clause activates automatically and irrevocably. Then the signatures. 8 years old, notarized, Simon Walsh's signature beside mine, fully authenticated, legally binding. Clara stared at the screen like it was alien glyphs. What is this? It can't be right, she whispered. Simon leaned forward, face cycling through confusion, recognition, horror. Turn that off. Now. I can't, counsel said quietly. It's in the system. Fully processed, logged. Next page loaded. The archived memo from 8 years ago. Emergency Protocols 18.3b. Redemption Triggers. Clause, Activation Conditions. Simon's approval signature. A courtroom-ready record. Jesus Christ, the CFO muttered, slumping. Clara's eyes burned into me. You set this up? I tilted my head. No, Clara. I prepared for it. You activated it. Why? Why would you? You fired me, I said calmly. Yesterday, retroactively, as part of a familial leadership restructure. I didn't write the clause after you did that. You walked directly into it. Simon slammed a hand on the table. This was never supposed to be active. It was theoretical, contingency planning. Then maybe you should have read what you signed. I replied, voice steady, professional, military precision. 2:43 p.m. Legal counsel scrambled. CFO's devices lit up like a Christmas tree. Phone, tablet, laptop, all alerting to changes in the equity management system. Equity transfer in progress, he said, disbelief flat in his voice. Executive pool reallocation. 68% controlling interest, transferring to, he looked up, to Adrian Clark. Timestamp 2:43 p.m. Status. Irreversible. The board chair, a woman who'd barely spoken in all prior meetings, turned slowly. Mr. Clark, your intentions as majority stakeholder? I considered the room. Faces frozen in shock, fear, grudging respect. Clara looked pale. Ma'am, I said finally, military tone. You just asked me what I planned to do with the weapon you handed me. I paused. Right now? I'm deciding whether to use it or simply enjoy having it. Simon whispered, barely audible. Adrian, we can negotiate, find a solution. I stood slowly, pulling my old company badge from my jacket, placing it on the table in front of Clara. The little plastic rectangle that had been my identity for 12 years. Thanks for firing me, I said. I couldn't have activated the clause myself. Needed you to pull the trigger. I walked toward the door, glanced back once. The conference screen still displayed. 68% controlling interest. A. Clark. Status. Complete. In the Army, I said to the room. We had a saying, the quiet professional gets the last word. I smiled. Today, I get the last laugh too. Outside, Colorado sunlight hit my face differently. Warmer, sharper, like it was welcoming me to a new world. I walked to my truck, parked outside the building I now controlled, and settled behind the wheel. Ranger would be waiting, probably wondering why his human had been gone so long. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what to do with a medical device company and 449 employees who were about to learn that the guy they'd fired was now in charge. But today, I'd drive home, pour a bourbon, and savor the satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. 15 years of military discipline, 12 years of corporate expertise, 8 years of patient preparation, culminating in this single moment. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's execution. And sometimes execution means getting everything.